And we're here with Dale Arnold. Dale, how are you?
All things being equal, I'm all right, Evan. How about you?
I'm doing well. Happy to have you here. Always fun when you can join Bruins Beat. It's funny when the Bruins were back in August and you were doing the pregame shows, you guys would all have to stand far apart. How was that? How much different was that for you?
I'll give NESN credit. They went to the absolute ultimate degree to make things as safe as they could. First of all, there's almost no one in the building. Almost everyone is working remote. Only the people who technically have to be in the building to get the job done. But then they would set up rooms for each of us. There was a room that was just for the Bruins studio crew, me, Billy, and Barry. No one could go in that room at any point, even if we weren't in the building. No one could go in the room. There's a room for TC for his thing. There's a room for the Bruins broadcast crew. There's a room for Jack and Brick. And literally no one can go in the room. Garen Austin has her own room. The way it's set up is they're trying to make everybody as safe as they can. You'd wear a mask at every moment you're in the building until literally just before the red light went on. You'd take the mask off. You'd do, pregame show, intermission, or whatever it was. Then the minute it ended, you put the mask back on. You go back into your separate room. But they did as much as they could under the circumstances that they had, and I appreciate it. I know Billy and Barry and Andrew did as well. And, I wish it had lasted longer, but for the time it lasted, it was as good as we could do under the circumstances. We were never closer than 6, 8, 10 feet apart.
That is amazing that NESN was that accommodating to have that. Especially, it was so good. It was such a sense of normalcy to see it done in person. It'd been so many months of seeing from home broadcasts, and that's fine. Those are great. And we would have appreciated that just as much, but to see it be all in person again felt like there was a little bit more normalcy, which
I think
hurt.
they did at one point at least discuss the possibility of doing what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, putting everybody remote, and we've done a lot of things remotely. All of us have, since all this took place. At WEEI, it's a little different in that those who want to go back into the building can, but my boss, Mark Hannon, has been very adamant. And he said, Dale, you don't come back into the building till you feel that you want to. And, if you're listening on the radio to when I do the show, you would never know that I'm sitting in this room right here in my basement with a little studio setup that they sent me, that they shipped to me, and we hooked it up. And it's not quite the same as NESN. They only have one studio, and so Greg Hill's show works in it, and then our show follows, and then OMF follows, and they do everything they can. They clean as often as they can. They keep as safe as they can, but they aren't able to segment things and partition things off the way NESN was able to do. And I know I caught some crap on Greg Hill's show about, you can go into NESN and do the pregame show, but you can't come into EEI. It's just different. It's not criticizing EEI or anything like that. Just physically, they were able to do more to keep everybody safe than they were able to do physically at EEI. And it's why when I do radio, I'm sitting in this room right here, and when I do TV, I'm in Watertown.
And you can see Rich and everybody else on your show, correct? Like from home? Oh, you can't see
No,
them.
I mean, we could theoretically, we could set up Zoom calls or FaceTimes. I think OMF is doing that. And truthfully, quite honestly, it's been more seamless than we expected under the circumstances.
Sounds
I haven't seen Rich since March 12th.
Really?
Literally have not seen him face to face since March 12th. Now we talk all the time, we text, we call, but I physically haven't seen him since March 12th. And we like to think that if you're listening at home, you don't know that. That's the whole idea here.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully this all ends at some point soon. I saw a thing today on Twitter that said that not everyone can be vaccinated until 2024 with this. And I was like, no.
If they need 2 doses, that's what they're saying. If you need a double dose of this, which some people have said, it could be. Now, I don't think it's going to be that long. Anthony Fauci said it might be the end of 2021 before we get back to pre-COVID levels where everybody was before.
Those were the days.
And even that seems like the end of the world for most of us.
I remember we met at the Stanley Cup last year, and we shook hands and we stood closer than 6 feet apart, and we didn't have masks on. Man, Dale, I mean, I miss those times.
It's funny you should say that. It's simple human interactions. I have 3 kids.
Mhm.
One lives in Richmond with his wife. One lives in California, although she's about to move back east with her fiance. One lives in Worcester. Now, I've seen the one in Worcester, once every week or two. We physically haven't touched since March. You see
Really?
your daughter, you give her a hug. We don't do that because, she's in a different place than I am. My wife and I are of an age that makes things a little more difficult. My wife had pretty major surgery this summer, and the surgeon made it clear you can't bring anything home. And so, we go and sit on my daughter's back deck and sit 10 feet apart, but I haven't hugged my daughter since March because that's kind of where we are right now.
It's a really tough place to be in, and I feel like this is impacting everyone negatively. That sounds horrible. Obviously, I wish your wife the best as she
Thank you.
recovers.
Thanks.
So let's get into some Bruins talk. This makes it feel a little bit more normal when we can talk about the old bees. So right now, obviously, the Bruins are fresh off of a second round exit against the Lightning, which obviously we've dissected quite a bit. You on your show, me on mine. But so Cam Neely said something last week that I thought was very interesting in his exit interviews, which always are pretty telling what they're going to do for the offseason. He said, quote, "We've got some guys that have played a lot of good hockey for us, a lot of years for us, and their careers are somewhat winding down. We have to really take a hard look at where we're at as an organization. Can we compete again for the Stanley Cup? If we can, what do we have to do to our roster to do that? So we really have to be honest with ourselves in assessing our team, assessing our players and the organization, seeing where we think we really are going to be. We have to be as brutally honest as possible about where we think we're going to be in the next couple of years. We have to react accordingly to that." Now, I heard that, and that makes me think there's 2 options. You either rebuild or you just die on the hill of this group. What do you think the Bruins should do, and what do you think they will do?
I do think there's a third option, and I understand the point you're making. Rebuild to me means like what the Red Sox are going through right now, which is you tear it down to the studs and you start over. And I hope to God, and I'm fairly certain Cam doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
They had the best record in the National Hockey League when the league broke it on March 12th. You don't have to take this down to the studs and start over. You don't also, in my opinion, come back with the exact same group. If you think about, the Tampa Bay Lightning, they're a win away from a Stanley Cup final. They're the team that eliminated you. You didn't have to play them last year when you got to the Stanley Cup final, but 2 years ago, they eliminated you again. That's kind of the measuring stick for me. And you've got to think about what do you have to do to get past them. Forget about winning the Stanley Cup. You got to get past Tampa Bay to get that far. And I think that's what Cam and Donnie Sweeney are looking at right now. And I think, Cam's very, very blunt. He's very honest. He tells it the way he feels it. And I sincerely appreciate that. I think they feel that they've got to make some moves. Now, some of those moves are going to be made for them. For instance, I think the Detroit Red Wings are going to back up a Brinks truck to Torrey Krug's backyard.
Absolutely.
And you're just not going to be able to afford him. And good for Torrey, by the way. That's not a knock on him at all. An undrafted free agent who put himself in that position. I'm thrilled for him. He deserves it. He's going to, in my opinion, get a chance to go home and play hockey in front of family and friends, and good for him. But you're going to have to replace that. You've got a decision to make about Zdeno Chara. I would bring Chara back. I would say he is a bottom 4 defenseman on your team. He's a penalty kill specialist. He's a guy who can absolutely help bring along the younger defensemen, whether that's Urho Vakanainen, whatever it is. Sorry about that. I had a call that came in.
No worries.
And I think that Chara is the perfect guy to help bring those people along. I would bring him back for another year. He's made it clear, A, he wants to play, and B, he wants to play for the Bruins. Now, I don't think he's a top 2 defenseman anymore. I don't think he's a 27-minute-a-night guy anymore. But In particular places, I think he still has value, even at the age of 43. And I'll be curious to see if the Bruins agree with that. I think you've also got to think about the possibility of a little more major surgery here. I'm not advocating this. I'm using it as an example. Do you consider the possibility of trading Tuukka Rask with a year left under his contract? Do you consider the possibility of trading David Creachy? Creachy's the highest paid player on the team right now. Everybody loves him. You know, we got glimpses of playoff David Creachy this year, and then we got glimpses of not playoff David Creachy. Do you consider the possibility of those moves? You look at the Dallas Stars right now, and you see where they've gotten with Anton Khudobin as, you know, their number one goaltender. I happen to think whoever you bring in here to be the goaltender to replace Tuukka Rask won't be as good as Tuukka Rask. You know, I think he's pretty darn good. My guess is they will bring Rask back. He's got a year left under his deal. I'm guessing that that's the case. But I think they're going to consider the possibility of making a little more major move. Do you bring back Jake DeBrusk if he thinks he's worth $5 million a year? And I'm using these as just throw out examples. Do you wonder if that's worth it to you in a sport in which the salary cap's going to be flat next year? So, you know, I think DeBrusk, Creachy, Rask, Chara, those are among the names. Unfortunately, some of these decisions are going to be made for you. Krug's going to be made for you. I love Kevin Miller, but his physical condition over the last couple of years may make that decision for you. Through no fault of him or anybody else, it just may be the way reality is. So those are among the things that I think you've got to consider. But if you've got a core, if you've got a base that includes, you know, Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak, just to start, Charlie McAvoy, Brandon Carlo, that's a pretty good basis for a pretty decent hockey team. It is certainly not a tear it down to the studs and start over hockey team, in my opinion.
I totally see this. I agree with you totally on this. I'm with you. I think there's a third option in the middle where you can retool parts and not change the whole foundation of the thing. It's like you're remodeling a house in a sense, but I think on a much smaller scale. Fluto Shinzawa has been throwing around potentially Jake DeBrusk. Also Brandon Carlo, who I'm not for trading really at all, unless you definitely are getting the better player in the deal. I don't see why you would trade Brandon Carlo. I think he's your shutdown D-man of the future. I don't see the need to do that. But someone like Jake DeBrusk, you know, he comes asking, his agent was mentioning $6 million back over the summer. I remember thinking, what? $6 million? I think DeBrusk should be getting around 3.5 that max right now on a short-term prove me type deal. So I think if he's asking for more, I think trading him wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. If you are upgrading your team, you know, again, you have to use this veteran core to upgrade your team and to actually continue to compete. The one thing I will say about your goaltending point with Khudobin is consistently the past few years, it's sort of been, you know, you need a hot goalie in the playoffs. Everyone knows that. You know, and just because a guy like is Tuukka Rask or Carey Price doesn't mean they're going to be hot, which makes it that much tougher to figure out. You know, if you bring in, let's say the Bruins hypothetically do trade Rask, and they bring in someone like, I don't know, Peter Mrazek.
Marc-Andre Fleury.
Marc-Andre Fleury would be a good one.
If the story out there is true that Robin Lehner has agreed to a 5-year contract extension, he doesn't want to talk about it right now, but I kind of think there's something to that. Fleury's going to be available. Yes.
So if you have a Fleury, or if you want to go cheaper and have a Mrazek-Halak tandem, it's luck. It's a total crapshoot of who's going to be hot come hopefully next year, April and May. So who would have picked Anton Khudobin to be the guy that's potentially going to take his team on a Stanley Cup run? As much as
to be the second
Dobie,
coming of Tim Thomas all of a sudden.
Yes. I mean, we love Dobie around here, but I mean, it's totally foreign to most NHL fan bases, especially down there in Carolina when they had him. So it really is kind of luck. Like, that's really what it comes down to with goaltenders in the playoffs. I mean, Jordan Binnington last year compared to Jordan Binnington this year. So that's going to be tough. I think, as you said, I think Rask comes back, and that's what they do. But
it's funny, though, if you think about the reaction when Tuukka opted out, and we would take calls on sports talk radio, and we'd hear from a lot of people who would say, good, damn it, get him out of there. It's time to let Yaroslav Halak have his moment in the sun anyway. He'll be great. Then after about 2 games of Yaroslav Halak, it was, where the hell is Tuukka? How could he leave this team hung out to dry like this? I was in communication with Tuukka on the day that he opted out.
Yes, you reported this.
I know.
This.
And,
You've had all the big
there
scoops of this year, Dale. Save some for the rest of us.
There were things that I could say, and there were things that I was not comfortable saying. But not long after I was communicating with Tuukka, I got a text from one of Tuukka's former teammates, who texted me and just said, I just got off the phone with Tukes. I can just tell you that if I was him, I'd have left too. Now, this was a former teammate. And, this was family. And in this day and age, with what's going on in the world, we all think of family more than anything else. Would it have been easier if he had opted out before they went there? If he had done a Stephen Camphor and just said, listen, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I think people still would have been pissed because he's such a polarizing player.
People would still be so pissed if he left before.
Yeah. But at least then they'd say, okay, at least I understand. He tried. The Bruins knew what was going on here. He was in communication with them, which is why Don Sweeney and Cam Neely said, we weren't surprised by this. They knew what was going on. They knew what Tuukka and his family was dealing with. So when he finally went to them that day in Toronto and said, look, I got to go home, they understood completely. And I can tell you that among his teammates, and I've heard this a lot, interestingly enough, by no one who was in the bubble in Toronto, but just knows what the players were thinking up there. Oh, the players are pissed. The players are upset with him. I talked to some of his teammates. They weren't upset at all. They understood exactly what he was dealing with. This wasn't a surprise to them either. And they were in complete support of him. If Tuukka Rask is back as the starting goaltender for the Bruins when they start the season, theoretically December 1st, whenever it is, he's not going to have many guys that he's got to win back in that dressing room. He's just not. And I know fans don't understand that and they don't believe it. But I can tell you, he's got more support within the organization than among the fan base.
Yeah, part of our job is to take sports extremely seriously. It's our jobs. You've made an incredible living and career. You have sandwiches named after you because
only one.
Only one, but it's a very good sandwich up in the main diner.
Hot lobster roll. What are you kidding me? It's the best.
It's the best. But so we obviously love to take sports extremely seriously, but in reality, like, family does come first. That's not, I mean, it's a cliche thrown around by like every student athlete ever, but it's true.
Evan,
family comes first.
It's why I'm doing my radio show in my basement.
Exactly.
Since March. It's not because I'm afraid of what's going to happen to me. We were told by a surgeon, you can't bring anything home for your wife here. You've got to be careful. I'm sitting in this room right here because of family. And but sorry, family comes first. It comes first for you. It comes first for me. It comes first for Tuukka. And, Dante Hightower opts out for the Patriots. Nobody says a word. Patrick Chung says, my wife's expecting a baby. Sorry, I can't show up. Nobody says a word. Tuukka Rask gets his butt hauled over the coals.
Well, that's also because he's the number one goalie, and the fans were a little more volatile with the Bruins, and there's been some.
He's
stuff
also
in the past.
just so polarizing.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, I think that's kind of all of it. But so we both agree Rask will be back. We both agree changes need to be made up front. But I don't think it's big changes, and I think we both have thought this. So I think I'm not going to sit here and propose trades because I think that's so annoying to do because they never end up happening. Like, no one would have guessed the Bruins would have went out and got Charlie Coyle at the deadline in 2018 or 2019. Like, no one projected that to happen.
Sure.
We figured Donato might be on the move, but no one was like, oh, it's going to be for Charlie Coyle. Like, that did come out of nowhere at the time. But free agency, I think, is very interesting because I do think the Bruins are in need of a veteran-ish left shot top four defenseman. Chara now will probably be on that third pairing if he's brought back with a guy like
maybe
Clifton.
the second, but yeah.
It's probably third. I don't know if I'd want him top four anymore, but because he's mainly shut down penalty kill role. But I think you want kind of a dual threat defenseman. There's some good, solid, cheaper left shot free agents out there. Guys like TJ Brody, Brendan Dillon. He's not going to be that expensive. Right shot, you have Travis Hamonic, Sami Vatanen. Do you think the Bruins go out and spend a little more than they usually do in free agency.
It'll be interesting to see, not just here in Boston, but around the National Hockey League, how GMs are going to handle this offseason spending, because we think it's going to be a flat cap for this year. Do we think that we know that it's going to go back up the year after?
I think they said a couple of years at least.
It's going to be a while. And, if you give a guy, and we've talked about Krug, and look, Detroit's got, a crap ton of cap space. They can probably afford to do this. But, how far out are you willing to go for a guy like Jake DeBrusk at big money, knowing that your cap's going to be flat for at least the next year, if not the next couple of years? It's a different financial landscape, not just in hockey, obviously, but in all the sports. And I'll be curious to see how they handle this. Now, generally speaking, when the Bruins make a move, the last 5, 6, 7 years, since Don Sweeney came on board, generally speaking, the reaction of fans is, really? That's it?
Yeah,
you're getting, Daniel Paille, and, it's that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's Charlie Coyle was a little different because of the local connection, college connection, Weymouth and all that. But for the most part, when they make an acquisition, it kind of underwhelms the fan base. This year, who the hell thought of Andre Kasha and Nick Ritchie as potential trade targets? And based on the way the playoffs, played out, maybe they weren't such great moves either. But, it may be names like you just said. It may be Brody or somebody like that who Bruins fans are going to go, well, wait a minute, he's not as good as Torrey Krug, or he's not as good as so-and-so. But it's this financial puzzle, this crossword melange that all these GMs have to deal with, where, okay, I've got this much money to spend. If I spend it on this defenseman here, I go get a top 2 defenseman. I get Charlie Coyle's, or Charlie McAvoy's defense partner for the next 5 years. Well, that's going to cost me so much money. I got no money left to spend up front. And by the way, it may be Matt Grzelcyk, who is Charlie McAvoy's defense partner going forward anyway.
I think that's what it's going to be. I also think that one thing this postseason, you mentioned the Lightning as a measuring stick. One thing this postseason opened our eyes to was, the scoring's coming from limited areas. It's the top line, it's the power play, and that's kind of it. You need depth. You need more scoring depth. The Lightning have tons of scoring depth.
Well, it's why the Lightning are blitzing the Islanders right now.
Yeah.
The play of the top line for the Lightning as compared to the play of the top line for the Islanders just isn't really close.
It's insane. And I think part of it is like, we all love Torrey Krug, and I'm in the same camp as you. Deserves every dollar he gets. He's been shortchanged his whole career. Deserves every dollar of the $8 or $9 million that Red Wings are going to helicopter into his house to give him. But do you really, is it a smart move as a team that's kind of on the fritz here of retooling and potentially rebuilding a few years down the line, to hand a 30-year-old, or going to be a 30-year-old left shot, smaller, only offensive defenseman, really, that amount of money per year with that long of a term? I mean, that is a deal that I can totally see when he's 34, 35, looking at going, the Bruins aren't in position to really need this deal on their books.
No, I'm convinced that Don Sweeney has made the same analytics that you have and said, look, I love the guy. I want to keep him on my team, but I can't pay that for that amount of time for it. And I'm not going to blame him a bit when it happens.
Yeah, and I think we've come to expect it. When we thought the cap would go up, it was like, oh, Krug coming back makes good sense. They'll have cap space. It's going to keep going up. So be it. Now it's so much different with this flat cap and with where the position that the Bruins are in, with the veteran core and these young guys. And by the way, Krug does not fit in either. He's more the middle, kind of that middle bridge there. Do you really want to put a ton of money into that? So that'll be interesting. I think
the guy you do spend that money on is Charlie McAvoy.
Yes. Oh, I'm totally
That's
on that. Guy. I'm totally on board with that.
If you think about the progression of franchise defensemen in the history of the Boston Bruins, and you go from Orr to Park to Bork to Chara, McAvoy's the next guy in that progression. He's the guy you do spend a 7-year deal for $9 or $10 million a year on, because he's the guy you're gonna center your franchise on going forward.
Yes, and I think when you put him with Grizzlick, you're going to see a much different Charlie McAvoy. When those two were together, statistically, they were very good. There was a lot of potential with them. I think they are going to be great. I think McAvoy, I've always been high on McAvoy. I think he had a great start to his career in that Senators series. And I think playing with Chara was great at the beginning. I think, he has to break every puck out pretty much. There's ups and downs to playing with Chara at this point in his career. But I'm totally in on paying McAvoy whatever he needs. What's funny is you mentioned a rebuild like the Red Sox. For Bruins fans to understand what a rebuild like the Red Sox are going through right now would be like for the Bruins,
Look at the Red Wings.
Think of trading David Pastrnak. Like that's like your Mookie Betts type thing, right? I mean, it's the same type of thing. They have the same impact, same young star, face of the league. Trading Mookie Betts would be like trading David Pastrnak. So I do not want to see them go through any rebuild anytime soon.
And I think other people, I mean, Wiggy on our radio station has said, trade Bergeron.
That was the best.
I think that there are people who have earned and deserve the right to begin and end their career. I wish the Bruins had been able to do it with Ray Bourque. It didn't work out that way. I would never want to see Patrice Bergeron wear another uniform. He might be my favorite Bruins player of all time, might be my favorite Bruins person of all time. And, oh, by the way, he's still really freaking good. Now,
also that.
Wiggy's argument is he gets you a lot in return because he's really good. And I get it. But are you net positive if you trade away a guy like Bergeron? Because I don't think you are.
No, I don't see what that does. You've done winning here. You've been to cups. You've won one. You'd like to win another. I think it'd be really good for the legacies of that veteran core to win another. But what's the point of dealing a guy away like that? Same with Chara. I don't want to see Chara in another uniform. I don't think we will. I don't think he signs anywhere else. I don't know if there's going to be anywhere that comes out of the woodwork to sign him. But Chara, Bergeron, no need to see them in another jersey. They should absolutely finish their careers here. Also, those people who want to trade, who want to like blow up the whole thing, just want chaos. And chaos is fun. I mean, chaos can be really fun, but it's not fun when you go see a team on the ice who has.
I don't know. I've kind of lived chaos since March. I'm not a big fan right now.
Yeah, it's
We've
not
had
that fun.
chaos in our lives since March, and I wouldn't mind a little normality and a little chill for a while.
It is nice to see some like fans in the stands here, even if it's really not that safe. It is like cool to kind of see, hey, like the Kansas City game the other night, the opening game for the NFL. Like, oh, there's fans here. It's kind of cool, the cheering, and forgot about that.
And booing.
And booing the moment of unity.
Honest to God. Let's boo the moment of unity. Yeah, you don't and let's boo the moment of unity so that we can get to the tomahawk chop.
Yeah, it's tough start for the Kansas City Chiefs fans in week one. But yeah, no, I agree. I didn't the minute they came to lock arms, I just heard the boo. I was like, oh my God, I forgot about this. Maybe they wanted Tuukka Rask. They were doing two for Tuukka Rask.
Or maybe they're racist.
Or that. Probably the latter. Yeah. I don't know if they're chanting for Tuukka Rask out there. But Dale, as always, thank you for joining. Is there anything you would like to plug before I let you go?
I'm working on book number 2 right now. In fact, when I'm done talking to you, I've got to make a phone call to the guy. I'm helping a former Bruin write his autobiography. It's an As Told To book. I haven't been given permission by Triumph Books to tell you who it is yet, although I don't know why. We're really deep into this whole thing. The manuscript is due December 31st. But let's just say it's a former Bruin fans love, and I have a feeling they'll like to hear his story. And hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I can tell everybody who it is, because he and I have been working on this thing since like February.
You told me about this a while ago.
Yeah, we've been working on it for a while, and I like it so far. And I'm generally kind of harsh on things that I write. The hardest part for me has been finding his voice, because this is his story, not my story. Mm-hmm. And trying to make sure that I tell this the way he would tell it. But I think we're there, and when it comes out, I think Bruins fans will want to buy it, and maybe Bruins fans in another city might want to buy it too. There's a hint.
I had an idea in my head, but I don't think it's there anymore. Can you say when the era the player was, or no? Can't, or give it away.
Stanley Cup champion.
Oh, I'm not going to guess it out loud, but I have a weird feeling I know who it might be, but I don't.
No.
I'm not going to sit here and play guessing games because you're not going to tell me. So it's just me yelling into the wind.
I've talked to a lot of his former teammates. And by the way, every one of them wants to tell tales about this guy. But it's been fun for me to connect with people and talk with people. And I think Bruins fans will enjoy the book when it comes out. That's all I can give you.
I'm just going to sit here and quiz myself on the on the Cup champs. But the most recent Cup champ, correct?
Yes.
Yes. I was going to say,
yeah.
I was like, not 1970. That wouldn't, I was like, maybe I might not know that as well. But Dale, as always, people can look forward to that when you announce it, which I imagine will be a pretty big thing.
It's going to be soon.
Should be fun. And also Dale and Keith every day, 10 to 2 on WEEI. Dale, as always, thank you for joining. And for CLNS Media, I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.